soon as we sat down and I started talking to Hailey, and you're going to take potentially a company.
She's a company commander now.
You're a company commander now. Mm-hmm. Okay. And again, like anything that's an OPSEC violation or you're not comfortable talking about, you just tell me to shut up and fuck off.
Okay.
And it won't hurt my feelings, okay? But I think it's actually a really interesting thing because what's your MOS?
I'm a 90 alpha, so logistician.
Say that again?
Logistician, 90 alpha.
Okay. What does that entail?
So right now I'm a forward support company commander, and all of that is supporting the line companies with like food, fuel, ammo, all that stuff.
Okay.
And like enabling kind of like the deep fight when we're out doing stuff. But
yeah.
It's really cool. I love it.
And you said you've been in the Army for 7 years now?
Mm-hmm. Since 2014.
And what rank are you?
Captain.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you come in? Like, how did you come in? ROTC or?
West Point. I commissioned out of West Point and was a transportation officer in my lieutenant years. And then like transportation ordnance and quartermaster, that's your base branch, your lieutenant years. And then you go to career course and we're just funneled into like the logistician life. So. And
I know before we started recording, you said that you're going to go to Ranger School soon.
Yeah.
And I want to hear about that because my generation, like I was in the regiment from 99 to 03, mm-hmm. right? But still I did a bunch of contract work and I was still part of the military lifestyle mm-hmm. until about 2009. And there was no girls going to Ranger School.
Yeah.
You know, and there was no women in the regiment or women in special operations. And now that there's been a shift in that, and thank you. I just had a beer delivered.
Best podcast ever.
Yeah. But when I was in the regiment, there was no talk of anything like a female company commander. But I think the way that the military is going, at least from what I see and the guys that I talk to, everybody's open to change mm-hmm. and everybody's cool with like, hey, as long as the standards are the same and she toes the line and mm-hmm. she proves herself, let's do this, you know? And is that what you have, like the vibe that you feel with today's Army? Yeah, definitely. And I've been lucky to work with some of the 275 guys, the Echo Company Commander currently. He's doing some like PT events with my soldiers and everything. And that's kind of how I was like, oh, maybe this is something I'm interested too. And he's been awesome, been so helpful. And he like reached out to his boss and then the people down at RHQ at Fort Benning, and put me in contact with like some female Rangers that are there right now. That are with 275? No, down in 375. Oh, 375. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then like some other logisticians that are in regiment and stuff. So they've been like really welcoming. They've been excited. They've been emailing me, talking to me. So it's just, I haven't like seen any like distaste or like unwantedness from them. So it's been a very welcoming experience. So are they just integrating females into like line platoons or what is the structure like as far as females in the regiment? I have no idea. I just know like the options for me would be to work in their like regimental force shop or be an Echo Company commander. And currently they're all full up of like my year group commander. So that'll be like a far shot if I do get that. But getting the option to like work in their SPO or their force shop would be awesome. As a logistician, at least. In the brigade right now, we have a female infantry company commander. She just went over to take her second company mm-hmm. as an HHC company commander in her engineer battalion. And we've also had integrated into all combat arms units. So right now, my adjutant, Lieutenant Brittany Taylor, mm-hmm. she is an armor officer. She's Ranger qualified, and she also has her expert soldier badge. So, one of the things I love, when I was a battalion commander, so this is, time frame. And so I know we've talked previously before, but for your guests who are listening, in 2-2, there's 7 battalions. So when we're talking 7 battalions, in each one of those battalions, they have anywhere between about 4 to 6 to 7 companies. So 37 companies total. So mm-hmm. Hailey's one of the 37 companies. Okay. And so out of those companies, there's a total of 10 logistics or support companies, and she's one of the support companies. And so what those support companies do, they integrated them with these line battalions. So you would have your rifle companies that you're familiar with. You'd have a headquarters company, and then you would have now a support company that they integrated as we started to become a little bit more adjusted what the formation of the brigade combat team looks like. Okay.
Look at now we got chow.
Yeah, we're having food delivered as we
Class 1
speak.
resupply.
That's
you.
right. It was funny because, when I got asked that question, we started, and I think there's about 60. Someone's probably going to fact check me as they're listening, but there's about 60.
He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Yeah. You can, it doesn't matter what you say.
I know.
There's people saying that.
Somebody's like, commenting right now. So about 60, but the good thing is all these women that have gone through this, they have become, a very close-knit community, and they've shared lessons learned.
Yeah.
They're encouraging. It's awesome. And in the brigade itself, Greg, there's been about 4 or 5 females that have made it through Ranger School. Recently, we had a female lieutenant who is an intel officer who ended up making it through, straight through.
So when I was through, there was the female fitness standard and the male fitness standard. Is that still a thing?
One standard.
One standard now.
One standard.
Okay. And so when did they switch that?
It's got to be now several years as they were doing the integration into combat arms. But specifically for Ranger School, the first times we were sending females into Ranger School, the time that I was going in battalion command, I was in battalion command 14 to 16, 2014, 2016. So about the 2015 timeframe, all females had to meet the same standards.
Yeah, because you know what the haters always say. They're going to lower the fucking standards to let females in. And you guys didn't see any of that. Huh?
No. So, and
how many pull-ups do you have to do to get into Ranger School?
I think it's like 8.
8. It's been 8 since I went to Ranger School.
Right.
So yeah.
But the other thing too is she's not going to say anything, but I'll brag on her. So she also received her expert soldier badge, and so it's a 12-mile road march, same standard. So for those that are not, you're familiar with expert infantry badge. So now we opened this up. The Army created another expert badge for those that were not in the infantry. Very similar skill sets or tasks that you have to go through. About 1 or 2, they're about different. But at the end, it's a 12-mile road march.
Yeah.
Same weight, doesn't matter what your MOS is. Everybody starts together. She finished first in her entire brigade. She did like a 2:08 12-miler.
Savage.
Exactly. I love it.
She would have beat me. On my EIB, I think I got like 2:15 or something.
Yeah.
Man.
You know what
it's rad though.
Yeah.
So is the one standard for females and males only in combat MOSs, or is it kind of Army wide now, or is there still 2 standards in other units?
There is one standard in terms of going into Ranger School.
Okay. Yeah.
As we're now doing a new physical fitness test called the Army Combat. The Army Combat Fitness Test. They're now breaking them up into groups based on the type of or your MOS or your skill set.
And I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
Because that was always the justification of having a different standard for females is because they're not in combat MOSs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now that you're going to have to be carrying your Ranger buddy off of a hot LZ, now we have to have one standard, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You guys used to ask me, it was funny because they said, hey, what do you think about females going to Ranger School? I'm like, all for it. We can't get enough guys to go. You know what I mean? Honestly, they show you the statistics, right? And they'll say, hey, the statistics to graduate Ranger School first time is, I think it's about 30%. And they'll show you can go back. Once again, someone's probably fact checking me.
Yeah.
And if you stay like I did, until you graduate, because Ranger School is as long as it takes, and for me it was over 100 days. The overall graduation rate for those that continue, to stay with it is probably just over 60%.
Okay.
So it's the same. It's the same thing. It may take an individual, what it is now, 50 days, 60 days. It may take some 300 days to go through.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we had a guest on our podcast and Cedric King. I mean, this guy was in the regiment. He was in the 101st. He got unfortunately he was a casualty in GWAT, lost both his legs. He opens up the discussion because this guy has been to Ranger School probably about 6 or 7 times.
We all know those Rangers.
Oh yeah, he's tabbed out with everything. Pathfinders, he's like, listen. He's like, Ranger School was harder than losing my legs. Dude, I'm like, that's not the best recruiting, like punchline right now that I gotta use.
So that actually reminds me of a funny story, and I'm actually wearing a shirt right now. Do you know who Joe Kent is?
I don't.
So he was in the regiment with me.
Oh, really?
And then he went on to other units that I'm not going to speak of while we're recording, but you know what I'm talking about. And he actually, and his wife was in that unit too.
Oh, great.
And they were both deployed, and she got killed in Syria.
Oh, wow.
God.
And so now he came home, and he's running for Congress here in Washington State.
Oh, wow.
And so I was in 2nd Battalion with him when we were young privates.
Yeah.
He went through Ranger School, and he completed everything, got his goes and everything, right? And then there was something during gear turn-in where they're like, hey, that's an integrity violation. Get the fuck out of line. And he's like, oh, shit, I think I just failed Ranger School, right?
No.
So he thought that meant he failed Ranger School. And he went and came back to regiment and was like, hey, I failed Ranger School. So then he went to SFAS, became a Green Beret before he went and took the next step, right? And someone was reviewing like his 201 file, and they're like, why don't you wear your Ranger tab?
No way.
He's like, what? Like, yeah, it's right here. So, yeah, Ranger School can be bizarre like that. We all have those friends that took the extended tour.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know Daryl Brown by chance?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
He was in with me, and he did his 20, and a lot of his, he became a sergeant major. He was out of Fort Lewis.
Okay.
And, yeah, he was one of those guys that had to redo every phase like 4 times. Oh, and it's just, I don't know how people do it. Like, I went straight through. And I had to do a commander's board at Mountains because I forget if you have, was it 1 or 2 major minuses?
I think it's 2.
It's 2. You have to do the commander's board.
Yeah.
And I was fucking super tired and starving. And I just walk into his office. I didn't like snap to attention and salute and be like, sir, Ranger, whatever, reporting for. I just fucked it all up. And he goes, get the fuck out of my office and try that again. And I was like, oh no, I'm definitely getting recycled. And then it was good to go. He gave me the pass. I was like, thank God. And so, and I don't know if I told you this last time. You know your last day in Ranger School?
Yeah.
When you're in Eglin Air Force Base, you put your parachute on, and they drop you back into bedding. We had our parachutes on, and cadre came out and said, everyone fucking de-kit, put your parachutes over here, come into the auditorium. We have something to show you. And it was 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Shit.
What a crazy day to graduate Ranger School, huh?
That's crazy.
And so we knew, like, okay, like, because it was peacetime Army up until that moment. And then you knew it's fucking going down, you know?
Man.
We didn't have to do the jump. They put us back on the bus.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was after you was probably, like much easier. But it's funny, like when we get done.
Well, that's the best thing that could happen because all Rangers hate jumping. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially when you get older. When you get older, you're like, I mean, it doesn't matter how hard, how tight you're holding that PLF. Oh, yeah.
And I swear to God, like every jump got exponentially worse for me.
Oh.
Like one of my last jumps, I got knocked out. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like, what the fuck is going on? And I was an Alpha company. So we were the air land company. Oh, yeah. I had the old school RSOVs.
Oh, yeah.
And so I didn't get half as many jumps as like Bravo company or Charlie company.
ACT.
And I was still like, fuck jumping.
Oh, yeah.
That's how I always know if I meet someone and they say they're a Ranger. I'm like, what do you think of jumping? Oh, it's fucking rad. I'm like, yeah, you're not a Ranger. I don't even need to I don't need to coin check you. You're full of shit, dude.
Yeah. So when I was in 175, they brought in the T11s. And so the T11, you're familiar with the T10, the canopy. And so when I jumped the T10, I could pop my chest strap, get all that stuff ready to go, and I would pull a slip at the very last second and get down. You jump the T11, it's like having a gigantic bouncy house above your head. That first jump that we had, and this is in 175, so these are guys that are relatively experienced jumping. We had 7 static line injuries. So the biggest difference, right, is the number one, the pack tray is incredibly, much larger in size. And there's no static line slack retainer. So these guys, it's all it's got is these rubber bands, so these retainer bands. So guys are popping, their static line. You have all this excess behind. An experienced jumper is going to pull the excess, right? Still hold that. And so he can hand the double sewn portion to his jump master. But all these inexperienced jumpers are handing with all this excess static line in the back. And we had 7 static line injuries. And then you hit the ground. The canopy is so large. I saw guys that were 220 pounds pop both canopy release, assemblies standing up like they were windsurfing and it was going to drag them across the DZ.
Have you already been to airborne school? Mm-mm. And so something they always talk about in airborne school, it's like, if you land on top of another jumper, run across his canopy and slip away. Dude, it happened to me one time. And like,
oh, that's crazy.
And I was like, and shout out Stosh Bazant. I remember he was another guy in my platoon, and I landed on the top of his canopy, and this was a night jump airfield seizure, you know, and it actually felt like solid ground.
Yeah.
And I was like, just in a moment in time, I'm thinking like, oh, that shit that they tell you in airborne school.
Yeah.
This is actually real. I can run across his chute. So I ran across the top of his canopy and slipped away.
Yeah.
Wham, dirt dart. You know, because we jumped at like, even for a training exercise, I think we were jumping at like 1,000 feet AGL or something silly. And it's like, before you know it, you're on the ground.
You are.
And so, yeah, I've never missed jumping for a second of my life since I've left regiment.
Well, that's the thing with the T11 now. You know, so I was talking about it in the T10, you can turn around and you can pull that slip the last second. Once you pull it on a T11, you're riding that thing in. There's no.
I don't understand. What do you like as you slip?
Once you pull it, there's not enough time because the canopy is so large. You know, in a T10, you could pull it, you could adjust, you get one riser. The canopy size is so significantly, you know, in size compared to the T10 that a lot of times when you're going through is, you know, once you pull and you're going down, you're riding whatever it is. So you read it the wrong way in the beginning.
You're fucked, dude.
So, you know, when you're talking about like you're landing on the top, a lot of times when you're landing on the top, you know, it's like running on a bouncy house that's deflated. And so, you know, when we were jumping the T11, you know, it was funny because we jumped the first time and it was like everybody's going and you see guys that are coming in before the same thing. You know, you want to be the first or you want to be the last, right, in that stick.
Yeah.
Or in the chop, right?
Of course,
absolutely.
Always.
And so when you're pulling duties, that's why it's the best pulling duties, right? You pull duties, you jump out, you're like looking around and you're like, where do I need to go? And you just like pull and you're just like going across that portion of it. This time I was jumping the T11 and I'm like sitting in the air. And you see anybody coming around, I'm like, slip away.
Yes,
Slip
yelling at
away,
each other.
yeah. As you're going, yeah, absolutely.
What's the big joint training exercise in Korea? Is it full eagle?
Full eagle's one of them.
So we were doing full eagle, and in order to get our Korean jump wings, they wanted us to jump out of planes that were piloted by South Korea.
Oh, wow.
Guess what happened? They dropped everybody in the Red Sea or whatever the fuck it is. I think it's the Yellow Sea. I don't remember. But yeah, everybody got to use their B7 floaties and make sure that those things were working. But I was one of the few guys that actually landed on the beach.
Yeah.
And my canopy went right over the top of a tree.
Wow.
And I was still a private. I just got to regiment. And I'm like, you know, it's like, put your fucking chute in the kit bag, run it to this point. And I'm like, I can't get my chute out of this tree. I'm going to get the shit smoked out of me. And I was like freaking out, right?
Yeah.
And so I took my Gerber and I cut all the 550 cord on half of the parachute so I could pull it off of the tree, put it in the kit bag, and was good to go. And then I was talking to guys about it afterwards, like, you can get fucking RFS'd for that.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? I couldn't get the parachute down. And they're like, dude, you fucking destroyed that thing. And you know how you put your name and your social and everything on that little card?
Yep.
And they're like, if they find out you destroyed that parachute, you're probably going to get RFS. And I was freaking out. Never heard another thing.
Yeah.
So
I think when I came in at 275, this is back in 05, and you know, it's the same thing. We have this conversation, right, about jumping. If you've not jumped for a while, and I don't know what it is. So for me, you know, I'm probably around the 80, 85 realm, and there's so many guys that have so many more jumps than I did. But when you in that first 10 to 15, right, until you've actually had a hard landing or you're injured something, you're just like, let's do it. You know, I need to get to these 30 jumps. I need to get this star. I need to do my night AJ, all this. And so I came here to 275 and I probably had about 15, 20 jumps. And the very first jump we were doing on Gray, we were getting ready to do a multilateral exercise. And they had a high altitude entanglement and we had a ranger that ended up getting killed.
Oh shit.
You know what I mean? So
what year was that?
This was 2005.
Okay.
And so, you know, and it happens and it causes, you know, a pause because, you know, you don't realize that you're doing all this dangerous stuff every day, training, and then it happens and you're like, holy cow.
Dude, we did a jump on Gray where a bunch of dudes fucked themselves up. Yeah. And after that, that's when because when I first got there, it was like a private, I think when I was at TAP Spec 4 too, the ankle braces, elbow pads, that shit was optional.
Yeah.
And nobody wore it, right?
Yeah.
And after a bunch of dudes broke their ankle, they said, hey, this shit is now mandatory.
Yeah.
And of course, Ranger, oh, that's fucking stupid. It's more shit that I have to pack in my rucksack,
Yeah. I had a platoon leader, brand new, first jump in battalion. We're getting ready to do SOSOP week. I think they call it forced entry, SOP now for, jump training prior to executing a multilateral exercise. And so we're getting ready to do our first jump. And I told him, I was like, you're talking to him. I could kind of tell he's a little nervous. I said, hey, you good to go? He's like, oh, yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we jump, right? And I'm one of the first guys coming out. It's a company level jump. Dude, Bohannon was on it.
Oh, my boy, dude.
Yeah, your boy was on it, right? So because he was one of my platoon sergeants. So I'm a Ranger Company commander. We do this jump on Gray, right? We go there, and the moment I hit, and I hit pretty hard, right? But it's a race. Get your weapon, comms on, and I'm like, hey, where's everybody? And then all of a sudden, I'm hearing this like screaming, like screaming.
Were you saying, suck it up, Ranger?
So there I am, right?
If you're doing that in combat, you're gonna get killed.
This is Major Chung. I'm like, who in the fuck is fucking making all that goddamn noise?
The poor kid. The poor kid.
Hey, my first sergeant, Reese Teagle, gets on and goes, A0103. That's 26. I'm like, okay. Like, we all know where he's at, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, tell him to shut the fuck up. And so we go over there, and I felt bad. I mean, this guy dislocated his ankle, fib break, really, really bad because he was reaching for the ground. So we went to see him at the end of the mission. He's sitting there. He's got his leg locked up, and I'm like, dude. I'm like, why were you screaming so loud? He's like, I wanted to make sure that everybody knew where I was at. And I said, dude, everybody knew you were at. We had to alert the FRG roster to let them know that you were okay. I'm like, dude.
Man, that's hilarious.
But I'll tell you what, right? So Kyle Packard's his name. That guy. From the moment 3 months later, right? He's walking around in his boot. He goes into our Surtex and stuff. And then that guy ended up still going to combat. I remember him to this day. He walks in and he had pins in his legs, all this other stuff. And he goes, I looked at the surgeon and the PA and I said, I need you to walk into the battalion commander's office and tell him that this guy's going to be 80%. And he can be able to do this mission. I'm not going to keep him back. And I said, the only thing he's not going to be able to do is the rope. So we go in there, and the commander was like, I don't know why I should keep this guy in position. And I said, sir, he's going to be able to do everything that we're required to do. And thank God he ended up, staying because, he was badass overseas.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah,
dude.
he was badass overseas.
Did you ever know, well, when I knew him, he was a captain, Captain Yancey. So the reason I bring it up is he tried to go enlisted. And when he was a kid, he got hit by a train and it cut his foot in half. And so what do you think MEPS is going to say to that? You're missing your foot. You're not going to.
When you're saying that, I'm just picturing the diagram, where they they circle and they X a bunch of things and it's like foot, right?
Yeah, exactly. Missing.
Foot missing.
Yeah, guess what? You're not going to be an Army Ranger. Well, so then he said, you know what? I'm going to go to fucking ROTC and not tell anyone about my foot. He did the whole program. And then when it was time to commission him, it's like, well, fuck, we invested all these years into this guy. And he did everything that was asked of him, got commissioned,
Smart
and
guy.
became a fucking Ranger company commander, missing
awesome.
his foot, That's
awesome.
And so, no, it's just like, the whole reason it made me think of that is you're like, that guy fucking got fucked up, and then he was still showed to be badass,
we were talking, I was wondering if we can go back real quick. We were talking about Ranger School. And the stories about the guys that have been there forever. And then at the same time, there's the stories of the guys that have been there forever. And then there's the stories of like, hey, have you ever been like that tired that you had no idea you were doing something?
Oh, yeah. I remember guys trying to call their wives on pine cones and shit like that.
Oh, God.
I mean,
like, bro, that's not a fucking phone. That's a pine cone. What are you doing?
one time we had a patrol that just stopped. Right. And the guy was like standing there and I was like, what are we doing? And so I walk up to the front and I'm like, hey, man, what are you doing? This guy's like standing right behind a tree. And he's like, I'm waiting for this guy to move. And I'm
No.
I don't think that guy's going to move, man. Just walk around him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Dude, do you remember the is there still the bean burrito MRE?
No.
Do you remember that one?
No, I don't remember
We used
that
to
one.
call it mummy dick because it's just this wrapped up, fucking disgusting looking thing. And I had this mummy dick in my hand. And then I just eat the mummy dick. I just passed out and fell on top of it.
Oh my God.
And like came to a couple seconds later and it smashed into the mud and there was a bunch of pine needles in it and stuff. Good to go.
Extra protein.
Yeah, exactly. I ate that mummy dick with extra mud, extra pine needles, and it was good to go. But yeah, no, it's weird when you're up for, I mean, I don't even remember how, Ranger School is just a blur to me now. But I remember straight hallucinating.
Yeah.
Like seeing logs come to life. And I still remember one turning into like, it looked like a German Shepherd and running off. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
We're in Narnia.
Yeah, seriously. Like, this doesn't make sense. But this is a good segue because I wanted to ask you, Hailey. And these are the unpopular questions that everybody wants to know, but nobody will ask, okay? Mm-hmm. So when I went to Ranger School, guess what happened when you needed to take a shit? You took a shit.
Yeah.
You dug a slit trench. You dug a slit trench and your Ranger buddy pulled security while you shit. Mm-hmm. Like, are they changing that stuff for females or is it still going down like that?
Same thing. So according to Brittany Taylor, my adjutant, she has a very vivid memory of recognizing that, you know, being just like anybody else in that same experience, you know?
Good. Well, that's how it has to be.
Absolutely.
That's how it has to be because it's like, you can't say like, okay, we're in this together, but we're going to give the females porta potties or something like that.
Hold on, time out. I need my privacy.
Yeah. Because guess what? When you're in Afghanistan and you're on security, you're in a patrol base and you have to shit, guess what happens? Your Ranger buddy pulls security for you.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, and here's the thing too, right? They're shaving their heads when they go to school.
That's fucking rad.
You know what I mean? So they shave their heads.
You're shaving your head?
So that's
fucking badass.
I went to the first RTAC class that was open to females.
What's
in
RTAC?
2015.
I'm not up to date with all the Army acronyms.
It's like the pre-Ranger. They like made all the females go before they went to Ranger School in 2015. I don't know if they still have to do that. Cert may be like the prerequisite now, but I went.
The haters were saying, I remember reading about that, and the haters were saying they're giving the females extra attention so they can pass. You know, fuck you.
No, but yeah, I had to shave my head for that, and then I got like a really bad concussion, so they dropped me, and I didn't go back. But yeah, shaving the head, it's real.
You know, so for the guys that are listening, right? You shave your head, your hair's gonna grow back. You know what I mean? Like 3 months. Be like a 20, 25-year-old female, shave your head, and your hair is going to take a while to grow back, right?
And
that's a significant emotional event.
It's the awkward stage. You look like you're Velma from Scooby-Doo. It's not cute. It's not cute.
I'm in that awkward stage.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
So, I got a funny story for you because I was like, you know what? I've been in the government my entire adult life. Mm-hmm. I'm going to grow my hair out. I'm going to grow my hair long. And then it was just hideous looking. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna shave it into a mohawk.
Oh, you got a mohawk on?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see.
Okay, yeah.
See, I got the mohawk going on. Because I feel like as a 40-year-old man, Joe Dirt. As a 40-year-old man, I can finally be ridiculous. Yeah. I don't have to answer anyone. I went right from the Army into contracting, into law enforcement. And my entire adult life, I had guys telling me I need to look like this, I need to do that. And now I've arrived at a place where I can tell everyone to fuck themselves. So I got a mullet. It feels good.
There you go.
Here's the other dynamic that nobody wants to talk about. Because I was a young Ranger and I know Ranger intimately. And if you're in a patrol base in the top of in like a mountaintop in Afghanistan, and you've been there for 6 months, you know what Ranger's thinking about.
Yeah.
Right? And so having a female in a platoon, let's say you have a platoon of 30 guys and you have 2 females. Guess what the other 28 Rangers are thinking about? How do you deal with that? And how do you make sure that that doesn't impede any type of combat effectiveness?
I mean, no matter what I do, like even if I'm not at Ranger School, if I'm not in a Ranger thing, if I'm in my FSC or whatever, like at least I'm just focusing on work. I'm focusing on my job. I'm focusing on the positive relationships that I build with my like other company commanders. They're all guys. They're all married, but like, I don't know. For me, it's just like a non-factor. Like I would never be like on a patrol base with a bunch of dudes, like thinking about like, oh, like hooking up with guys at that time.
You might not be thinking about that.
But I mean, and if those guys are, then let them think it. But like, shame on them, kind of.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Hey, I'm your battle buddy here. Like, I'm trying to like help you do the mission, get everything done. But like, I mean, of course, those thoughts are never going to go away in like a person's mind because that's like human nature. But at the end of the day, it's like, dude, leave me alone. Like we're doing our job here.
So is there any type, because currently there can be enlisted females in the infantry, right?
Absolutely.
Is there any type of rules or regulations that like you can't date within your platoon?
No,
there's nothing that's
because I think about that. I think about like, hey, she was dating this guy and then they got in a fight and they broke up and now she's in a relationship with a guy in 3rd squad. And you know how that could potentially like cause a lot of drama in a platoon that nobody fucking wants.
Yeah.
And so I know for me, like when I think about a female in my platoon, dude, if she can carry the weight, if she can pass a PT test, like, fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
You know? But then there's also that other dynamic. It's like, man, if something like that didn't happen, no big deal, right?
Yeah.
But you start to think about all the drama of relationships.
Yeah.
I've had some pretty big drama in relationships in my life. And to tell you the truth, when I would go to Afghanistan or Iraq, I could detach from that stuff.
Yeah.
And now that stuff is potentially going to be right there in your face still. So
Yeah.
what do you guys think of like military officers in leadership positions? How do you deal with that kind of stuff? Because it's a reality.
Yeah. I think it goes back to how you establish this environment. So you see them as a teammate, you see them as part of the family, right? So it's the same thing. I'm raising a 17-year-old son now, and in my house I have a granddaughter who's 16. So there's different approaches to get to the same end state. But also at the same time, I'm treating them both dignity and respect. So you're going to have some guys that are coming in there, right? And they got certain things, but it's about teaching them the discipline. So when they have those things, you've got some stuff that's in place that goes back to the portion that they get checked. And then you've got some guys that come in, right? And they've been raised and they want to take care of females. And you're like, you also have to then, educate them and then work this thing about some discipline and say like, no. They're going to do the same thing. So like, for example, when I was a battalion commander, we had all the lieutenants together, and one of our female lieutenants, we were supposed to pick up, I think it was like 250 kilogram or 50-pound kettlebells, and do a farmer's carry back and forth for about 100 yards. She was struggling. She picked it up. One of the company commanders were like, "Hey, if you can't do it, only pick up one." And I was like, 15 feet away. I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I walked over to her and I said, don't ever let anybody in this formation give you a reason to say that you're not doing the same thing they are.
Yeah.
And so I watched her, right? Pick them up, take 2 steps, drop them. Pick them up, take 2 steps, drop them. At the end of this competition, her hands were completely all torn up, bleeding or whatever. But you know what they became? They were her battle scars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And after that,
yeah.
she was locking around and she was like, look at my hands, you know what I mean? And so there was never one of those cases where somebody was like, okay, I'm going to pick this up. And I'll tell you right now, Greg, like we run these squad competitions and I love when I see a female non-commissioned officer, female soldier, female officer just getting after it.
Yeah.
You guys
were doing those the day I came down last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Out in the quad. Is that what you
I
call
love
it?
I call it Lancer Field.
Lancer Field.
Right?
Okay.
And then there's the road, and then where we brought all the boxes together. So we're talking gym in a box. So it's a Connex that has all your bumper plates, your kettlebells, all that.
Barbells and stuff.
And so we brought all those to the center. We call that the arena.
Okay.
It looks really
No,
cool.
well, that
It looks
actually
really
brings
cool.
up the last point that you hear people that are against females serving in combat MOSs.
Yeah.
Is exactly that. Is that most men have a natural reaction
Yeah.
to want to help a female.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, if some guy started walking up and he was an active shooter right now, I'm more inclined to help you than Nick over there. I know it's bullshit.
See that?
But it's the truth, though, right?
I'm actually like more likely to help Nick. I mean, I'm actually wondering where Nick's at.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess you could say like through your fixed wing, rotor ring, all your train
Yeah.
ups and stuff is
Yeah.
like, by the end of all that stuff, you realize we're all in this
Yeah.
together and kind of train that out of people
Well, I mean-
if that's their inclinations.
Yeah, you said it, Greg. So it goes back to the same thing, right? There's a standard that you want everybody to do the same thing. You build the conditions so you're all doing the same portion of it, right? So, we got to get past this point. We go on a deployment. It's like, hey, do we need to put females in this tent and then make a separate tent, or we have males in a separate tent? It's like, hey, we're all part of the same thing.
Yep.
And we're disciplined. We have dignity and respect. We're good enough to do this. And the other thing too is when you're in charge of an organization, you have the leaders that you look at, right? They're also the ones that are like your sheepdogs that go like, hey, it's the same thing. When you have, a daughter or a granddaughter and a son, my message to them is the same, but the approach is different with both of them. But it's the same thing. I could line up a bunch of guys. A guy that graduated from high school and didn't play one sport except for Xbox and Halo, he's a whatever champion. He's going to receive the hard hug differently, than a guy who's like, hey, sir, I'm all American, this, that, whatever. You want us to carry 80 pounds from JBLM to Mount Rainier? Let's go.
Yeah. So here's the last thing, and then I'll leave you alone. I'll stop harping on females in the Rangers. But for instance, like I was in Ramadi, and we had an operation where a bunch of kids died, and we were seeing dead kids laying right in front of us. Yeah. And some of my teammates are like, fuck those kids. They're going to be terrorists someday anyways. Fuck them. And then some of my other teammates were in tears. Yeah. Right? And I think that some people think that a female has... just by nature, you're more of a nurturer, and the thought of shooting someone in their fucking face from 5 feet away, I know when I was in regiment is like, that's the kind of stuff dreams are made of, right? I can say that stuff now. Dude,
we can't say that.
Okay. But no, like, is a female excited about meeting the fucking enemy on the field of battle? Because that is the Ranger mission.
Yeah.
If you're not excited about meeting the enemy on the field of battle, you're not a fucking Ranger, right? Meet him on the field of battle and shoot him in the... When we were young Rangers and they said, the first question they ask you when you get to the platoon as a new guy, they said, why do you want to be a Ranger? And there was one guy that came with us that had got the intel, and he goes... because I want to shoot people in their fucking face. And then all the squad leaders like, I want that guy. I want that guy. You know what I mean? That's Ranger culture. And people that have never been to combat or have never been part of a unit like that, they might not be able to understand it. But the reality of it is, to do that mission, you have to want to do that.
Yeah. So there's a process, right? When we train soldiers, leaders to prepare for combat, you almost have to go through this, dehumanize, so you can make that conscious decision to pull the trigger.
For sure.
It is not a natural act. So anybody that says that, I can absolutely do it, you're a fucking psycho.
Well, you've read On Killing, right?
Absolutely.
They talk about the E-type silhouette.
E-type silhouettes.
Was to condition people to kill human beings because they couldn't get people to kill human beings.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when they go through this process, here's the thing. You can ramp them up. And I think, male or female, but you also have this responsibility to bring them back. And you and I have talked that same thing. All the guys that we know that have done this stuff, cortisol is like, shooting through adrenaline through their veins about, and everything that they have. And now they come back and everything is not, go shoot somebody in the face.
Yeah.
And you realize that, there's plenty of times that I've probably had the same interaction, with a combatant overseas, but now that combatant looks like my 17-year-old son. So you have to, as much as we put the investment to make them go through this portion to be able to make that conscious decision, I think that you also we owe that to them to bring them back and be able to go through this transition as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as females, some of us are conditioned to be more nurturing and everything, but when you sign up to go to war, to be in that environment, to know that you may have to kill someone, it shouldn't really be that big of an issue. And sure, people may get emotional after they kill someone, or I've never done it, but and there'll be that ethical and moral fight within. But if you're putting yourself in that situation, you should know the consequences that are going to come back on you. So,
as we're sitting here talking about it now, it's actually making me think it might be healthier to be able to have a little more humanity attaching humanity to your enemy or having a little more emotional response to shooting somebody. Yeah. Because when I was in, it was like, if you weren't hard as woodpecker lips, you were a fucking pussy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was kind of, no, that was the standard though, right? Mm-hmm. Well, why do you think everybody has PTSD and a bunch of issues now? Yeah. Even all my buddies, the natural progression for a lot of Rangers is just go to the unit.
Yeah.
And my generation of unit guys are now retiring, and I was on the phone literally 2 days ago with one of my buddies who was in the unit in Syria and got blown up and he's all fucked up. And it's like all these mental problems because for the longest time, we dehumanized people.
Yeah.
We looked at them as E-type silhouettes, right? Yeah. And now come full circle and most of us are parents and most of us are removed from the war a little bit. And you look back on that and it's like, man.
Yeah.
What the fuck were we doing? Just like you said, your combatants, you look at them and draw a parallel to your 17-year-old son.
Yeah.
And I think it might be a healthier approach to understand all that stuff going into it.
Yeah.
But then it's a balance, right? Because you can't feel sorry for people while you're killing them either.
Absolutely.
You
got to know when you pull the trigger and you're placed in that situation, whether you're the leader that put that soldiers or Rangers in that situation at the point, the tip of the spear. If you're in that position right there, you got to know. And it's not so much the action you're going to do. It goes back to the same thing, right? It's the book of the 5 rings.
Yep.
It's to have that balance.
I love that book.
It's to have that balance and go back to be able to say, what is the stuff that makes you human? Mm-hmm. And so I tell guys all the time, and I don't try to compare combat experiences. There's guys that have done so many more things that are more dangerous. But I will tell you, for anybody that has ever experienced in the situation where you're kind of going through you say like, wow, like we're going to have to fight our way out of this. And you have this like, this race of adrenaline, your heart is beating out of your chest. And you're kind of like, everything kind of goes through your mind. It reminds me of a scene in like Saving Private Ryan, when Tom Hanks is going through and everything seems like it's, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, but it's just going so fast because all these sensory things are going on and it's on overload. And then, when they talk about training and all this other stuff, some starts to kick in. And then that kind of showed me how much you had been invested in, how much that people had trained you for that exact moment. Mm-hmm. And then there's that moment of clarity that you go, okay, here's what we're going to end up doing. But then, when you leave, it's like this sense, right? It's like this drug that you've never had, that has never been able to be replaced. It doesn't matter if you jump out of airplanes. It doesn't matter if you're doing a live fire. And you crave this.
Oh, yeah.
You crave this. And so what I found myself, and I think I have this conversation with a lot of guys, is that when you go back every time, and then you start, like in our business, I've talked about this all the time, right? It's about, repetitive professional judgment to manage 2 things, violence and risk. And when you can't look at the situation, you're like, okay, hey, there's like 20 PKMs on this target, like, all right, we're going to hit it. And there's no other thought about, okay, hey, is there another way we can look at this? Hey, can we minimize what we need to do, mitigate the risk on this portion of it? I can go in there and crush this portion of it, but I haven't thought through this because every time I'm doing this, I'm getting more and more numb, to the situation. And so that was part of the thing that I kind of looked at this. And you mentioned even operators. We sat down with Tom Satterley and just to hear his discussion, and the thing that resonated with me was, he sat there and talked about how he was planning, to end his life, in a rental car. And the only thing that made him take pause, he goes,
Jen called him.
Yeah. And he goes, I'm not even thinking about my family. I'm not thinking about my son.
Yeah.
You know what he was thinking about? He was thinking about the poor guy that had to clean up the rental car when he blew his brains out. And it's like, when you hear that and guys are going through this.
A guy like him.
Exactly.
Who fought in the streets of Mogadishu.
To the capture of Saddam Hussein.
Career.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so for all those guys that are going to be listening, right? It's and what we go through now, you and I and continuing on, you're going to see guys that have, they're legends, they're giants. They have done some incredible things, and this country has asked them to do over the last 20 years. And a lot of them are having their own demons. They're coming to terms with a lot of the things that they have to have, and it's that transition back to being a human. It goes back to this, Book of Five Rings.
Well, and this is a perfect segue because I wanted to ask you, this was on my mind coming down here. What has the military changed during the ETS process to get people prepared for that moment where you have a shift in who you are? Yeah. And for me, like when I got out of the military, I was still like, fuck everybody. I don't give a shit if I don't care about dead kids. I don't care about anything, right? Yeah. You know what shifted it for me is when I had my own children. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I'm looking at this baby. And then I circle back around to Ramadi looking at dead babies in the street. Yeah. And I was like, you didn't give a fuck about those babies. And it's the same as your baby right here. Yeah. Over here, over there. That's a human being. Yeah. That's all it is. Yeah. They were just born on the other side of planet Earth. Yeah. And then your mind starts spinning and you start thinking about man, I really had the wrong approach to this. Yeah. But you can't have those kind of emotions in the moment.
That's right.
Because then you're going to be combat ineffective. Yeah. Right? And I feel like we've had enough experience of combat and killing overseas. Is the military doing something to prepare soldiers for that moment? Because for me, I didn't have that moment. I got out at I was a young Ranger, and I got out in 2004, and I didn't have that moment where I was looking at my own daughter until 2008. Yeah. 4 years later, I'm kind of reliving these emotions. Yeah. And I think a lot of guys and gals go through that.
Yeah, I think, I talked about this last time. Sometimes you're going to have these physiological responses that you can't explain. When you serve in an organization like the Ranger Regiment, you serve in a BCT, you serve in, a SMU unit, it varies at different degrees, but they teach you all these things to master the art of compartmentalization. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is your world that you control, you can say, this makes sense. I know how to do this. They've taught me everything I need to do in this situation to own every action, control everything I do. And then the moment that you have an experience that you cannot control, that's where you start to wonder. You go through the Rolodex of everything you're done, right? I'll take it down to the very beginning of, here's everything you need to do just to squeeze the trigger and qualifying on an M16. I'm going to teach you everything you need to do before you pull this trigger. And then you have this response. I talked about it last time we were at this, together. I said, at some point, right, I had this flight. And I had jumped out of planes and all this other stuff. And then I just had this flight where I could not control. I was not in a parachute. I was not pulling any duties. I was not getting out of there. And it was so much turbulence. And after that, every time that I saw a plane, that I was moving to a plane, my heart was freaking beating out of my chest. And I was like, what is wrong with me? It took me 8 months. And so, recently we just flew. My wife had the same experience and she hates flying. And so we flew recently down in Texas and we had a rough flight, and so I went
She's
back.
See, that's why I hate fucking flying.
She did. And so I went back to the same thing. I told her, I said, hey, this is what I did. And I talked through the breathing exercise. I went through that same thing while I was with her and it did. And so I tell guys I think going back to your original question, and when it really specifically talks about, you were talking about, guys are ACAP and it's called now Soldier for Life, Transition Assistance Program. There's phenomenal resources for soldiers to never forget. Regardless if you served one day, regardless if you served, 15 rotations in the GWAT, if you served a day as part of the less than 1% that's protecting the 99, there are resources, there's network of resources to help you. I think the thing that we need to continue to challenge ourselves to get better, right? So we have behavioral health, or now they're calling it mental fitness or mental well-being. I show up, they help me diagnose what I'm unpacking. But it's what do I do after that? Yeah. So I use the example where I go to a PA, he diagnoses what I have, right away I get involved in reconditioning PT. And so in the Ranger Regiment, they led that stuff. Now we have this thing called the Health and Holistic Force that's part of our Lancer Performance Center. And you got a strength coach, you got a PT, you got all this, and you're building it out. And so I tell guys, I said, it's not just going to this this professional to talk about your problems. If I was going to like a 30-day program for drugs or alcohol or being a sex addict, it wouldn't be just a one-on-one thing. There'd be like small group sessions. There'd be a PT, get those endorphins going. They'd be teaching me mental, so I'd be lashed up with an occupational therapist. Like that's the part there that we as leaders serving at the tactical level need to continue to build these networks. So we're not having these soldiers that are transitioning and now they're trying to figure out, hey, I'm dealing with these bad dreams. I'm having these night sweats. I'm having, and now they're trying to like figure this out on their own. We've got to be able to help them do that while they're in service before they actually go through that process.
Well, I mean, just you articulating that, it sounds like it's dramatically changed.
It has.
From when I was in. So that's pretty awesome.
They have like briefs for like all different agencies that are still like accessible to you when you do get out. So like therapists, doctors, PT stuff, and it's really cool. And they give you like phone numbers and where to go and everything. So it is really helpful. I just had a few soldiers go through it, and it's awesome.
Okay,
so it's definitely a good changed resource.
So, what does it look like moving forward in today's Army? Because Afghanistan is pretty much wound down, right? Is there still? I mean, I'm sure there's still certain specialized units in Afghanistan, but Big Army's not there anymore, right?
No, everything is starting to close down. I mean, it's the same thing that everybody sees in open press, and the focus is, we always go back to what does the national security strategy say? What is the national defense, national military strategy? So we're now focused on great power competition. It's China and Russia.
Yeah.
So here's the beauty. So for all your listeners that are out there, right, that are saying, hey, should I join the Army? Go to the 82nd, 101st, 10th Mountain, 18th Airborne Corps, 1st Cav, or whatever it is. Guess what? They're not deploying anymore. So where a great opportunity is. A lot of senior leaders will talk about the strategic center of gravity is increasing these relationship with allies and partners. So doing all these things, guess what? There's a lot of work to be done in the Indo-PACOM AOR.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I know, like, a lot of people look back on like the GWAT, right? And to tell you the truth, I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Where you sometimes look back on what I lost some people that are very close to me. Jay Blessing, Ricardo Barraza.
Yeah.
And I think you knew those guys too, right?
I did.
And it's like everybody has their friends that they lost that they look back on now and they're like, now that we're just pulling out of all these places and you kind of have to ask yourself, what were we doing over there?
Yeah.
Do you, and you as a senior leader in the military, do you have guys that are asking you that question or feeling those feelings? And is that something that like affects the I don't even know what to necessarily call that, but like just the unit cohesion, I guess you could say. Yeah. Because I look back on that stuff and I have to say, like, man, was Ramadi worth Barraza? If I could go back, I'd say no.
Yeah.
I
think that the thing that makes this institution great, it's the same thing we were talking about before. You watch Rambo, you watch Braveheart, you're like, where do I need to go?
Yeah.
Re-enlist, first assignment Korea? Let me do it. I'll do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's that same type of, excitement, that same thing, it is fueled, within certain individuals within American, the American public that says, I want to serve. I am looking for that. I am trying to find a way to do that. And
I actually love that you said that because I've talked about that before. It's like young Ranger, we don't care about the political landscape.
That's right.
These guys want to get in the fight.
That's right.
So where's the fight at?
That's right. And that's the beauty about it, right? It's like it's constantly getting this new energy that's coming in. And I think a lot of them, I always tell guys, don't be in a rush to move into the next leadership position, command or whatever it is, and don't be in a rush to go to combat. Because if you're going to go into combat, it's one thing to be in combat in a special mission unit, or in SOF, but if you go to combat in a general purpose force, in the conventional force, that means we're going there for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things that have changed that now we're going to go in this thing called the declared theater of active armed conflict.
Yep.
And once we go, I mean, there's a lot of things that need to put in motion in order to do that.
And I think another good point to bring up with that is your combat experience should not define you as a leader.
Absolutely.
Because some of the, and I guarantee you will agree with this, some of the best leaders you've ever served under didn't serve a day in combat, right?
You know, it's funny. I tell guys all the time, I'm like, hey, like, I'm the guy, if you look at my bio, right, and you do this thing, some guys want to put like, I have X number of these awards and this, that, whatever. I list the awards. I don't tell the number.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll tell you, like, I have 7 Bronze Stars. 3 of them are very specific, like, objectives. The other ones, it's the same one that somebody was doing, like, you know, moving things, cargo back and forth, you know, at an airfield.
Yeah.
You know? And so I don't try to glamorize what it is. So what I tell guys is the same thing. If you've been there, you're wearing the patch of experience, you also own this thing. And they don't really understand that, right? Because it's like what you and I were talking about before. The moment that you come back, you want to share about how glorious it was and what you were missing out. And you're like, dude, we were pulling guard, man.
Yeah.
Like, don't be bullshitting us. And you know, here's the thing I love, right? There was a bunch of guys sitting around, right?
You know, because dude, a question that I get asked all the time: how many people did you kill?
That's right.
And it's like, that has nothing to do with how good of a ranger you are. And I always like to say this little caveat on when people ask that. Anyone that's served in combat, it is hectic.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Half the time when you engage a target, there's a bunch of other guys engaging that target.
That's exactly right.
Half the time when you engage a target, he runs away and you don't know the end result.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when people start throwing numbers out, it's like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
You're so full of it.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing too,
I
right?
have 37 confirmed kills. No, you don't, dude. This isn't a movie.
Yeah.
You know?
We're not talking Halo numbers now. Relax.
Yeah.
You know, we had all our non-commissioned officers who were going through a course that we were doing in the brigade, and I looked around and only one had a combat patch. And I said, hey,
That's a like
it says a lot.
Substantial shift in the military.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because there was, I mean, what was there? A 10-year period
That's exactly
where
right.
every private had a combat patch.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. And so I shared with him, and he was coming from 10th Mountain. I said, hey, so what was that experience like? And he stood up and goes, you know, hey, sir, I'll be honest with you. All we did was pull guard.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I told him, I was like, I truly appreciate you sharing that with everybody that doesn't have a combat patch who thinks they're missing out on something right now. Instead of realizing like, hey, when you asked, hey, what are we focused on now? We're not going back to Iraq, Afghanistan, you know, and things are changing. You know what's changing? Now we're focusing on a different, you know, threat.
Yeah.
And great power competition. So if we're constantly worried, right, and we're feeling that you feel like you're missing something and not looking ahead, and I think that those that have been over there, just like we're talking about, you know, be cautious about the things. And, you know, it's so funny, too,
careful
right?
what you wish for.
That's
right?
exactly right. And you never know who you're going to run into.
But I will say this, like, I got my CIB
Yeah.
long before I was inside of anything that I would call combat.
Yeah.
You know, we got mortared a couple times. We had an IED or two. Here's your CIB. And I remember looking at that when I got home, and I was like, dude, the guys that stormed the beaches in Normandy wear this.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have. Yeah, exactly. Right here.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have no business having this.
I'm the same way.
And then, as weird as it sounds, I reached a point where after a couple other deployments and I got in some really bad situations,
Yeah.
it was almost like validating. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
You know what I mean? Now,
That's exactly right.
Now I can wear this with pride because I have seen some shit and I have experienced this side of things.
Yeah.
But the military, like, it's all, it's a game of percentages. You can go through all the steps to be the highest, like, capable soldier. You can be in the unit.
Yeah.
And some guys, it's all by chance, right? And some guys see the craziest shit, and then other guys never see anything. And I remember talking to guys that, like, a lot of people felt a lot of frustration about that. Like, dude, we've never done shit. We're not hitting any, like, HVTs, and we're stuck on the FOB. And then you rotate out and 175 replaces you, and then they're fucking slaughtering dudes. And third battalion hit the Haditha Dam, and we have to hear all these stories, and it's like, everybody's always wanting to get after it. But I love what you just said. Careful what you wish for.
That's exactly right.
Because it can have a very the other end of the spectrum is like, you don't come home a war hero. You come home a double amputee. Yeah. You come home with losing 2 of your best friends and all that stuff. And you have to look back on it and say, okay, you got what you wanted. Was it worth it? You know?
And I've never deployed. And so the Army's big on like wearing your things, wearing all your awards and stuff. And so like when I walk in the room and all my peers, they have like deployment patches and stuff.
16 pieces of flair.
Like, sure, I get.
Hey, the Pathfinder badge, the most useless piece of flair of them all.
It's big though.
You probably got that. You got that, right?
No, I don't. I don't have Pathfinder.
I know guys that have Pathfinder badges, and I don't know anyone that's ever done the Pathfinder mission.
Haven't found a single path.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine. Like you walk into a room and you automatically kind of feel less than and maybe insecure based off like the Army like standards, all the who's what in the town and everything, but like I hate to say it, like I'm kind of thankful I don't have one because that means I'm going into a place where I would be like supporting people taking lives of I mean, and rightfully so, that's the business of war, but like as a logistician, like we're moving commodities, we're moving bullets, and it's not just like a number on a paper, it's something that's going to kill someone.
Yeah.
And so it like being not like on the front lines but backside.
Well, and I can tell you, I love that you said that because how many guys in the regiment think that they're like the hottest shit around,
all
right?
of them.
And here's the reality. Here's the reality of being in the regiment, right? If you want to eat, if you want your helicopters to fly, if you want to be resupplied, like the Army is a machine and we are one cog of a wheel, right? And if you start to think like that your shit doesn't stink because you're a Ranger, all the other people, all the other support people that make your mission possible, if one of those people says, I'm out, you're either starving to death. You're not getting there. There's no fucking QRF coming in. Like,
that's right.
You have to understand, I'm just part of this. I'm not any better. I'm not any worse. When I went to the fucking recruiter, I said, hey, send me to RAS for whatever reason. That was your path, right?
Yeah.
But if everybody doesn't take their path, you're combat ineffective.
Yeah.
And so, I used to have a problem with that because fucking pogues and fucking legs. And it's like, bro, we're not that cool.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? So the GWAD gave us a little bit different, interpretation of what the battlefield looks like. And so, but if you're going to do it, like, go back to the beginning of what it was like to the march up to Baghdad, right? And Jessica Lynch, and convoys, they got intercepted because we weren't treated as a mission. This is why I turn around and regardless of what your MOS is, when you go and you cross the LD, when you leave, the safety and security of what we've established, your number one priority, regardless of what your MOS is to fight enemy contact. Never lose sight about that at all. Same thing on a freaking airfield seizure. When we brief and say like, okay, hey, what's your job? My job is to clear, this part of the main and the associated taxiways. Wrong. Next, what's your job? My job is to, open up the RCPs. Like, wrong. Hey, listen up. Everybody. Your number one job when you get down is fighting enemy contact. I better not walk by a squad who's like putting out markers, and chem lights to mark this associated taxiway, and there's a gunfight going on. Yeah.
Speaking of airfield seizures, I just want to say one caveat on that. And Nick, you've done this before. When everyone synchronizes their watches, right? And they say, planes are going to be landing at this time. Do not be on the runway.
That's right.
And I remember you, like, as a young private, I'm like, I'll fucking hear a plane landing. Like, if a plane's going to run me over, I'll know it, right? No, you won't fucking know it.
You won't know.
Those C-130s are like, you don't hear, you could hear a fucking pin drop, and then in like 3 seconds, and they're down on top of you. It's like, what the fuck? Okay, now I know. Now I know why my team leader was harping on the fucking do not cross the runway like hard times.
That's exactly right.
It's crazy, dude.
Oh yeah.
Crazy.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna be there soon.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. What's good? She did well, huh?
Yeah, you were nervous of podcasting, and now you're a podcasting
Very
OG.
Nervous. Don't have much to say, and but it's good. Did it. Mark that off the bucket list and we're good.
No, in all reality is like, there's a lot of the veterans community now. You have this wide range of guys that served back when I served and then all the way up until now, right? And so like I was saying before we started recording, there's a Brotherhood of a Scroll Facebook page where all past and present Rangers are connected. So you hear people having opinions from all backgrounds, you know?
Which is awesome.
And the female in the military, I honestly think most Rangers are embracing that and saying, hey, this is where the times are going. This is where we're at as a country. Yeah. There's still some people like, fuck that. Girls have no fucking business in the Army, you know? Yeah. But the reality of it is like, well, you have two choices: to kind of embrace the change and then figure out the best way to move forward, or sit back and bitch about it.
And
right?
like, the best motivator is a hater. So like if people are telling me you can't do that, it's like,
and I'm going to put this out there for anyone that's listening that's like, she shouldn't be a fucking Ranger. I want you to challenge her to a foot race.
Yeah.
And if she wins, you can fuck yourself.
She's an athlete.
Yeah, I know, right?
She is an athlete. You know, so you were talking about like, you know, hey, can we get females to this point? Sometimes it's just trying to get the guy that played video games to the point that he can pull the trigger, right?
Yeah.
So it's how do you create this environment that you need these individuals to compete? And if you get that to them, that's the closer portion that they're going to be able to get them to that point. So they got to make that decision.
I heard a podcast with Tim Kennedy where he was talking about that, and they said recruiting for special forces, they're reaching a point where most recruits can't pass the base level PT, right? Is there have you seen that as far as like basic military recruiting or into the regiment or anything like that?
I don't know what the stats are now. So when I was at school about 2.5 years ago, they used to always say, you know, the ages between 18 to 25, there were about 40% that were even, you know, mentally and physically able across the, you know, the public that could actually even serve. And I think those numbers have actually, you know, gone down. And so I always ask when, you know, is it are you a legacy or are you a trailblazer? You know, and a lot of times you meet these individuals and they're serving because they had somebody in their family or something like that to serve it. But I'll tell you what, you know, when you find athletes, I think athletes, you know, make this transition pretty well. I mean, we talk about it. We reference sports stuff all the time. But here's the thing. The way the Army is now fighting with all these different domains, you can't just get the guy that's, you know, played at Ohio State, you know, that's like he can crush through anything, you know, strong ranger. You got to find this individual, right, that, you know, he can code, you know, he can sit there and you can crush through all these things. He can build out networks. And so how do you take both those types of individuals, you know, put them through something and then make them believe that they're all key members of the team? And I think that, you know, that's something that the Army, I appreciate, you know, the chance to serve now and see. I think that's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And I talk about it a lot. Like when I came into the regiment, I wasn't one of those kids that was wrestling and playing football and running track. I was one of those kids that was chasing girls and pounding beers, right? And I immediately felt like, oh, for these dudes that did come in as athletes, I'm playing catch up, you know?
Yeah.
So I can tell you, if you're listening and you're a young person that has military aspirations, start playing sports.
Yeah.
And not just to get your cardiovascular fitness and your muscular endurance, but it also starts to build like team cohesion.
Absolutely.
You learn about leadership.
Absolutely.
You learn about taking commands from people. Like everything about team sports directly correlates to military service.
Absolutely.
And I was young, but I was still like capable of looking at the guys that were good athletes and understanding like, oh, these fuckers have a leg up on me. I got some work to do, you know?
And I mean, and a lot of times like people will be listening, right? Kids in high school will be like, hey, well, I'm not good enough I want to be in the military, but I'm not good enough to be on this sports team or whatever. There's so many opportunities, right?
Yeah.
There's leagues. I mean, it's the same thing. You know, we talked about, you know, the 4 basic martial arts. Like, go join a gym. Go join a CrossFit box. Like, I love if you watch and you gather all the athletes together. Like, there's physiological and there's differences between men and women. But you know, like when they have the event like the Murph, they're wearing the, you know, the same thing. They put them all together, and a lot of times it's a female athlete that'll end up winning that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, guys, like, it's already happening around us, you know, and like, why would you ever want to limit talent?
For sure.
Ever.
Do you know your Murph time?
Oh, I haven't done that in so long.
Oh, she's going to embarrass some people.
No.
What's your Murph? Come on, what's your Murph
I
time?
honestly don't know.
Hey, for the listeners, it's better than Ondovcsik.
Nick, what's your Murph time?
Better than yours, worse than hers.
My best is 37 minutes.
Oh,
that's not bad.
5 a.m. We'll see it.
Oh.
No, so let me tell you a story about Murph. So I actually have a female. It's one of my wife's friends, and she's the best athlete that I know. Oh, wow. Right? And so she's in charge of our workout.
Yeah.
She programs all our workouts. So she said, hey, I'm not going to be able to be there on Memorial Day. So we're doing Murph a month early. So I did Murph like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, good.
And I did it like 45 minutes and just felt like a big fat slug. And my hip still hurts. And I'm like, dude, your hip hurts from Murph. That's a telltale sign you're getting old, dude. And it still hurts, and it's been 2 weeks, you know? But hey, I'm still trying to get after it.
That's good. That's all. And like being a part of, like, you don't have to be like the top athlete, but just having the want to be a part of the team is so important, because like especially in the Army, like you want the little soldiers to want to be there and like want to be around the people who are the top tier athletes, or like the hard charging NCOs. Like you want the little guys to like want that.
Yeah, you should always be looking at someone to chase.
Yeah.
And even 40-year-olds, even at 40 years old, like I don't feel like I have anything figured out, you know, and I'm still like, one day I'm going to get there.
Yeah.
You know, and as long as you have the one day I'm going to get there mindset, I feel like you're on the right track, you know?
Yep.
I still suck at everything that I do. Like even though, you're my black belt in jiu-jitsu and a ranger, I was like, no, that's like false advertising.
Yeah.
Because my jiu-jitsu sucks.
Yeah.
My fitness sucks. Like, but you start to feel like, and I'm not saying that like self-deprecating, but I like, if you ever feel like, hey, I made it.
Yeah,
I'm the guy.
You don't
I'm good to go.
That.
You're having the wrong approach, you know? And it's the same thing with promotions.
That's right.
Like, so my promotion to E5 in the regiment, I was in Afghanistan, and my PL said, hey, Greg, or hey, Anderson, come into my hooch. We have something to talk to you about. And it was Sergeant Bannerman. Do you know Bannerman?
I do know Bannerman.
Okay.
I know who he is.
And then, God, what was my PL's name? This is fucking terrible, and I'm forgetting it.
Oh, Satterlin.
Satterlin. Yeah, you know my PL's name, right?
Rich Satterlin.
It was Rich Satterlin. And they said, hey, you're being promoted to E5, and you're taking Alpha 2, Alpha. I was Alpha 3-1.
Yeah.
And I was in that fucking squad, and they said, you're going to be fucking Bravo team leader. And I was like, no, don't, like, because for anyone that doesn't know, being a tab spec 4 in the regiment, it's for the best fucking position on planet Earth.
Hey, I want everybody to know that. That should be the best plan. I mean, that's the best position, and not just the regiment.
And I was a saw gunner, tab spec 4.
Oh, yeah.
No one fucks with you.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody. And if you're good at your job, everybody likes you.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, no one fucks with me and everyone likes me for the first time ever.
Yeah.
Right? And then they're like, no, actually, you're going to be at E5 now. And I remember I was like, I got a 7-8 and I was like reading like fucking take out a bunker and all this shit. Cause I was like, dude, they're going to be looking at me now for those answers.
Oh yeah.
You know, but that's a good lesson. And I like correlate that to jujitsu a lot, because no promotion should ever feel like, I tell my guys, if you feel like you're ready for a promotion, you're not looking at things right.
That's
right. A promotion should be a burden. A promotion should be like, oh shit, I have more responsibility. More people are going to be looking at me for the answers. Yeah. Like those type of things should instill nerves in you. And if you're ever the guy that's like, you know what? Hey, I'm ready. You're looking at things backwards.
Greg, I think that's the same point. We were talking about awards and, you know, combat experience and all this. If you're wearing the 16 pieces of flair, you're wearing a Ranger scroll, there comes with a responsibility. You know, there's one thing to parrot and there's another thing to live it, you know? And so they're going to be watching. So, you know, and I love that you're talking about it, because, you know, I just turned 45, but, you know, every time you
way older than me.
What? We're gonna what? So, you know, every time I was telling, I went to do this here in DuPont, and it started with Lisa Hallett. You open up the chapter, Wear Blue. You know, her husband, John Hallett, was killed when 5-2 Stryker Brigade and then transitioned to 2-2. And she started this organization, this nonprofit. It's gone, you know, national now. And so I run, you know, every once in a while I show up And I'm just thinking, like, I grab my son over here, and a lot of times he's sleeping till like 2:00 in the afternoon. He's like, "Nah, Dad, I'm not gonna do this." So
you bought him a new Lexus, and he's good, right?
yeah. So if I look at him right now, like, we have to do, like, "Hey, Dad, I'm dirty bulking right now," you know.
Are you drinking Celtec creatine? That's what I used to bulk. That's what I used to bulk when I was your age. Now I use different stuff because I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. So you go to this thing, right? And we you're not using that stuff, Brandon.
All right, let me ask something. Nick, since you basically were the host the last time I had you on, are you ready to take host duties for 45 seconds? Because I'm about to piss my pants.
I'm in.
You got it? All right, here, grab it.
Here, you can take these ones.
You can take those ones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here.
Haley's tapping out. After I talked to her about taking shits in patrol bases, that was enough, right?
Yeah. Jeremy's up.
I want to know who you are. We haven't even met yet.
I am Jessica Wolf. I am Jeremy Flores' secondhand person. I'm his XO right now.
Okay. Yep. And so you're a captain, yeah?
No, first lieutenant.
First lieutenant?
Yep. So I started the Army. It's my second career.
Make sure we talk right into this.
It was my second career. I was a consultant first. Joined the Army as a 35 Papa. Went green to gold. Now here I am, commissioned as MI.
Okay. Yep. So how long have you been in altogether?
About 9 years.
And how long before you went to the green to gold?
About 4 years.
Okay.
4 or 5 years.
So you were enlisted for 4 or 5 years.
Yes. And then the program itself was about 2.
Got it. See, I think, and sorry if I'm offending anybody, but I think in today's Army, everybody should be enlisted first.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right?
Makes for a better leader.
And I think, like, if you go way back into military history, why did officers have to be college educated? Because they were disseminating information. They had to read. They had to write the operations orders. Now everybody's educated.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so, were you ever enlisted before I continue to offend you?
So yes.
Okay, fuck yeah.
Hey, but there's a disclaimer.
Okay.
So I went to the West Point prep school where I had to enlist.
Got it. Okay.
And so I went through had a drill sergeant from basic training, Drill Sergeant Reyes, 3rd Ranger Battalion, Ranger Scroll. So that was that year of being, hazed by specialists and all that. That was my year of being enlisted.
It doesn't count.
No, that's pretty cool.
Not at all.
So where are you out of now then? You're not part of Colonel Chung's.
I am.
Oh,
Actually,
you are?
I am the XO for the MICO.
Yeah. So
For the MICO?
Yes, his and my company. His
military
one and my
company.
Got it.
Yeah, so-
I'm so far removed from military acronyms
Yeah.
that, like,
So we're a bunch of nerds, military intelligence.
okay.
It's like the Star Wars bar.
Correct.
That is accurate.
So Flores was another company commander. So he's a company commander in the Brigade Engineer Battalion.
Okay.
So like I mentioned, right, 37 companies in the Lancer Brigade. So both Jeremy and Hailey are company commanders, and she's Flores's company XO.
Got it. 37 companies. That's crazy.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's even crazier that I got to rate all those guys.
Yeah.
But they're awesome, man.
So
they're awesome.
This is a question for both of you guys. Did you ever arrive at a place where you felt like I'm suited for leadership? Like, I got this. Like, my people can look to me. I'm confident or I'm competent in this position. Because I remember thinking, like, just like I told you earlier, when I got an E5, I wanted nothing to do with that, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was like 35, 36, 37 when I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I think I have enough life experience now
Yeah.
where I could offer competent leadership to young Rangers. It made me want to fucking re-enlist, right? Like, because I had my degree by then. I was like, could I be a PL? Like, but seriously, like, I was
If you can
always
read a map, you can.
I was no.
Or
No.
not.
Yeah,
Or
if you're
not.
Yeah, don't. All right, quick PL story, and then I'll let you answer the question. So we got
not saddling, though.
Well, no. His name was Capozzoli. You remember him by chance? You
I
ever
don't.
come across him?
I don't.
He was a brand new PL, and we were doing some platoon exercise, and we put a bowling ball size rock in the bottom of his ruck. Right? And it was PFC Mata, who I'm still friends with to this day, put this giant rock in the PL's rucksack when he wasn't looking. And then when it was time to, get your gear on and move out, we're like, how long before he says something, right? How long before he realizes? And that fucking dude never, this rock had to weigh another 40 fucking pounds or something. And you never even knew it. He played it off perfectly.
That's awesome.
Never dropped his ruck and looked in there. Nothing. And so immediately gained respect from the men. The privates were like, dude, this dude's a stud. We're fucking with him big time. He doesn't care at all.
That's awesome.
So,
Dumping all the water out before you start. It's a smart move.
no, but I have to assume as a new lieutenant.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you're ready to conquer the world, right? Like, where do you feel like that shift happened where I got this?
Yeah, so I think it goes back to what we were talking about before. So number one, you play sports, right? So you get some of that experience. Mm-hmm. I was the oldest of 5. My dad was in the military. My mom was a teacher. So they placed a lot of responsibility early on me. But then, when you go through the academy, at the very end, I wrote like a 3-page paper and like on my own. It was like a journal about what I thought good leadership was. And I still, to this day, this is what I offer to all, junior officers and really to any leader, that says, hey, write down what you think a great leader or good leadership is. And then every time that you continue to move on, read that again. And if you don't agree with it, then ask yourself, what has changed? I think that the first time you really get tested is where So it's one thing tactically, right? Because you always want to know, am I going to be that individual that has it when the moment comes and then you're dealing with contact?
Yeah, for sure.
And then same kind of thing, right?
Well, I think everybody asks that question of themselves.
Yeah.
Like, when I meet that moment, how am I going to perform?
Yeah.
Not even a leadership position, just how am I going to perform as a human, as a man, as a human,
And if I could go back, and I share all these things, right? And all these stories that I had when I was a kid, and we'll have Brandon kind of like, he's heard probably some of them I think my parents probably were like, I don't know how he's going to end up doing, And I share this, the first time I shot mortars, the first time I had was when I was a company commander, in combat at that moment. And, at the end of all that stuff, two ambushes in a 24-hour period, I'll never forget my FSNCO running up and going sir, two ambushes in 24 hours, kill these guys, no injuries. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's that thing that you're looking for as a young officer. Maybe I'm okay at this.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm okay.
I don't suck.
Yeah. Maybe I can make it to the next rank level. So I think that portion of it, you're waiting and anticipating that moment. And if you don't kind of, think in your mind hey, how am I going to do when I do this? And you never know when it's going to come, right? So we always talk about combat's measuring opportunities, and opportunity can't necessarily be identified because there's it's disguised by hard work and pain and all this. And then the moment it happens and you're expected, they don't care. That opportunity doesn't care how much experience, how much schooling, what's going on in your personal and family life. It's whether or not you rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
And the thing I would leave with everybody is it's not about necessarily the tactical decisions you make. It's more in the sense that as you were done going through this, you made a decision, you demonstrated presence, you were trying to take control the best as you could, disseminate, and then lead this team through some chaos. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I think that those individuals surrounding you are going to have respect for it. And so if it's not combat, it's the same thing. You have a challenge or something is going on, and it's what we call a crucible moment, right? And for me, that initial crucible moment was Ranger School. So it's you find out that you fail something, and you make it through, and you're like, maybe I can do this, And if you can do this, then can that same thing that I just learned translate in the moment when guys are going to look to you? Because you're expected to be the one to deliver the decision and the guidance.
Did you go to Ranger School before you had any command, or were you a PL first? Okay.
I did.
That's part of the PL pipeline, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. And we going back to this. I know we always talk Ranger School stories on Ondovcsik. What?
I want to hear lots of Ranger School stories. That's all that matters right now.
So, my final patrol in Florida, we get down there, and when you get down there, they put you at close interval, you dump all your gear, and at that moment you're going to lose something because your ranger buddies are all going to have something, and at the very end, it's like, hey man, who's got like large, long, like pants? That's not me,
Yeah.
And so we get done, and we talked about how like you can hallucinate and get to a point. Well, I was pretty good, and to the point where we got to Florida, and it was like the very last portion in the mountains before that last patrol. We were walking, and I looked up, and I saw like this entire like skyline that was on fire, and I was like, how'd they get that village on fire up there? And they're like, what fire, man? So I knew it was like, oh man, like I'm tired.
Yeah, I'm losing it.
And so I got to Florida, right? And this is actually it's pretty timely. My Ranger School Ranger buddy, right? Ernesto Gutierrez, he actually just connected to me on LinkedIn. It's pretty funny. But he was a pack clerk in 175. So he was the guy that like helped me, like, hey, this is how you rig a rucksack, or, for jumping. And all. He did all that stuff, right? And I was like, hey, I will remember to this day when I tripped over like this log, had the saw like fall on my face. He came up, didn't say anything, grabbed it, cut it, grabbed mine, attached the M4, and we kept moving. We got to the point, right? I'm in Florida, and I was like, man, we've been walking all night. And I'm like, I'm just going to dig this hole, and I'm just going to like lay down, pull security, but I know I'm going to fall asleep. Dude.
And potentially get a major minus.
I woke up like sitting Indian style. No,
it's called crisscross applesauce now.
I mean, I was sitting there, right? And as I was sitting there, I'm holding on to the barrel of my rifle. I've got no kit on. And I'm like, what the? I'm like pulling this, and I'm like, hey, get off my shit. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, what? And then I'm pulling this stuff, and I'm putting my kit back on, and I'm like looking around. I was like outside the patrol base.
Oh shit.
By myself. And I was like, and then
Did you just wander out there asleep?
I was wandering out there like sleepwalking.
Oh shit.
And then I'm like looking around, right? And then I'm like, you want to try to play it off because you don't know where the RIs are at. Like, I'm like, Gutierrez, Yeah. And I hear this voice, no shit. It's about 100 feet away. And I'm like, what the, so ever since that, I had probably about 6 more days left in Florida.
Uh-huh.
When I was like done and we were pulling security, I used to tie my leg to a tree.
Oh shit.
To make sure that I wouldn't like wake up. Cause like, and even when I got my go in Florida, I got done and I told and it's actually my good friend, he was a classmate at West Point. He was the platoon leader. He was just like, he had to do like 4 patrols at the very end, past the last one. I told him, I'm like, hey man, I'm going to sit down right here for 10 minutes. Like make sure that like I'm up, we're good to go for RI changeover. Like I wake up to all the RIs yelling, and I'm standing over the machine gun, and I'm holding my poncho, right? And I'm yelling at this guy, and I'm like, what am I doing? And I look at this guy, and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I have no idea why you're yelling at me. And I look down, Greg, I didn't have my boots on.
Oh, shit.
Like, not just boots, like no socks. So yes, that's the kind of shit that can happen to you while you're a Ranger.
Yeah.
And so the guy that was my RI, he was my first sergeant when I was a company commander in Alaska. So I went down there, right, and he gave me a go because he was like, every time we were going through this entire portion, and this was the time during changeover. So I got to go, and I went down to Alaska, and I see this NCO, and I was like, hey, Sergeant, were you? He's like, oh, yeah, yes, sir. He's like, was I your RI? And I said, you were. So, now we're in Afghanistan, and I'm briefing an op order like, hey, this is what we're going to do, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, hey, sir, I got a couple of comments. I said, hey, First Sergeant, when you had an opportunity to vote?
Yeah. That's hilarious. So I remember another story from fucking Florida. You know how you have to put in like resupply requests?
Oh, yeah.
Right? And if your resupply requests aren't spot on, the RIs will fuck with you.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't remember who puts in the resupply requests in the platoon?
Platoon sergeant.
It's the platoon sergeant? Okay.
Yeah, platoon sergeant.
So he asked for chapstick, right? but he didn't articulate how much chapstick he wanted. Because, by the end of Ranger School, like your lips are cracking. Everyone has cellulitis, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so yeah. So the next day, they say, hey, we got your resupply, and we have your chapstick. And every Ranger got a case of chapstick. It was like 500 sticks of chapstick. Wow. And it's like, you guys want chapstick? You got fucking chapstick. And now it's part of your equipment. And I was just thinking, like, where the fuck did the Army get 30 bricks of chapstick? Whoever was that supply guy was just waiting for an opportunity to just push this out,
No one's ever requested chapstick ever before. This is it.
So, dude, guys are just turning the chapstick till the whole thing pops out and using it as lotion, dude. Rubbing it all over their body, their knees that are full of cellulitis and shit. And it ended up being a blessing in disguise because we're like, oh, this is kind of nice, Only in the Army does shit like that happen.
Oh, man. So we digress on a Ranger School story.
Absolutely.
Are you going to Ranger School?
I am not.
It's available now.
It is.
Okay.
I will support from afar, but I will not go.
All right. I like it. It's not for everybody. If I had to redo it again, I probably wouldn't do it either.
Yeah. I tell everybody, be a Ranger or a Ranger supporter.
Yeah.
Which is good.
All right. Well, fuck, we're already at an hour and 43 minutes.
I love it.
A pretty good podcast. Is there anything else we want to touch on or talk about? Anything you had in mind coming into this? Before? Yeah, you got some stuff.
Yeah, I think
the Colonel has some stuff.
Well, first is, just the opportunity to come here, right? We were talking about the FOB, Jared Warden. We had him our podcast. It just, it's a guy's, small business, veteran supporting what he's doing. But really, it's about the, environment. It's like today is like this location is kind of like, a modern day VFW, for all intents and purposes, right? And so it's just great. And I told him I was laughing because this location is right off the corridor I-5. It's right outside, of JBLM. And I was like, dude, as a prior intel guy, I would have hoped you would have picked the right terrain, what I mean, to place this location. And he's been phenomenal, to support events. And there's a lot of great things that are, come from this. And, this is at a 20 plus years having something like this. I remember growing up and, having certain events that it was like, we had it at an officers club. We used to have whatever, the post club was. Now we're doing certain things. But if you have something like this where guys can go like, hey, at the end of the day, we had like a crushing week and you come down here and have a beer. He has created that same thing. And if you walk in there and you look at it, very plain and simple. But it's the same camaraderie. It's the same environment that you were bonding when you were overseas, right?
Yeah.
During the GWAT. It's picnic tables, it's camo nets. It's whatever we put together. It was like, hey, let's just get together. It's a fire pit. Guys are playing a guitar, and it's great. So I really appreciate him doing this. And it's been pretty neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. And are we in Stillicum, or is that a couple miles down the road?
We are still in DuPont.
Oh, still in DuPont.
So Stillicum is a couple miles.
Is the Stillicum pub still down there?
It is.
Because that used to be one of our go-tos.
Yeah.
Man, that's been a long time running.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of great places there. That's a great place down there. No, I feel
like young Ranger could go to the Stillicum pub.
Yeah.
And behave himself. If we went downtown Tacoma,
no,
things were going to fall apart.
No.
Yeah.
No. It's true. But Tacoma's changed though.
That's what I've heard.
It's changed a lot. I don't know.
Tacoma's nicer than Seattle now.
Yes.
That's rumor on the street. And I don't doubt it because Seattle is an absolute shithole right now.
There's some places that, I think as things start to open up, they'll continue to, it was weird. I took my wife and I went up there, a couple weeks back. And it was like a ghost town, right? It was like, the scene from, what's that Will Smith movie? I Am Legend, right? So, you could walk from Pioneer Square, make your way through the, the business district and all these gigantic buildings, right? Where banks are all and like the small eateries completely vacant.
Yeah.
I mean, weird.
It's fucking bizarre.
It is crazy, right? Homeless everywhere.
Yeah.
Homeless everywhere.
I mean, the 3 years I was a police officer down there, I watched that city decay exponentially. And it's crazy that that's just the new norm now.
Yeah.
Oh, Seattle's full of tents and drug addicts and homeless. And it's like, what's strange to me is you can go across the bridge and be in Bellevue. None of it, right?
Yeah.
So when people are like, well, what do we do? We have no solutions. Just go talk to the Bellevue City Council because apparently they figured it out, you know?
Yeah. I have faith that I think as things start to open back up after this pandemic, that they'll.
I hope so. Yeah. So that's actually a good place to leave this on because I wanted to ask both you guys as leaders and officers in the military, going through the whole COVID thing.
Yeah.
And seeing like, I mean, I remember when I came down last time, it was masks and social distancing and like trying to do any type of training or maintain like squad proficiency in any of the tasks that we're expected to.
Yeah.
It had to be tough, right?
Absolutely.
And now that we're starting to, and I guess I should ask, is the military starting to come out of that and you're able to kind of move back towards what we were doing previously?
Yeah, I think that if you go back and you look at it, right, so it's the availability of testing, you know, and try to identify what we need to do and how to isolate populations that have been infected or not infected, trying to understand what's the course of this thing, whether it's, you know, a certain number of days of quarantine, could guys be, you know, asymptomatic and still go through this. It's trying to still execute some type of training where you're creating a bubble. And you could see that everywhere, right? In professional sports. You know, my son, you know, he turns me on. He's like, Dad, he's like, look at what Dana White's doing, you know, and he created Fight Island and all this. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't tell him this, but there's a lot of things that, you know, they were doing that I'm like, why are we not doing that?
Yeah.
You know, and so there's a lot of things that as we looked at it, a lot of people were like, hey, why are we doing this training? We actually continue to do a lot of training, you know, to make guys and, you know, make the entire team understand and believe that, you know, we're not going to do this in fear, but we're going to do it smartly, you know, and if there's a risk to it that comes out to it, we'll mitigate through that piece of it.
Yeah.
And to answer, you know, the final portion of this is, I mean, you see the restrictions, I guess, in, you know, the 30th of June, it's supposed to open up. And I know everybody's been itching at it. You know, it helps with the summer weather that's coming in. We've just gotten, you know, updates from our senior leadership there at JBLM that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask indoors, outdoors.
And I know this is a touchy subject, but is the Army mandating the vaccine?
The Army is not mandating the vaccine, and it's never mandated the vaccine since day one.
That actually makes me happy to hear because regardless of where you stand on it, I think it's good to allow people to have that choice.
Yeah.
Right. And so you know, you always hear the rumor mill goes crazy because of the fucking internet and you never know what's real and what's not. But I was reading like soldiers can't eat unless they have the vaccine. They can't work out unless they have the vaccine. Is that, what have you seen as a battalion commander? Like,
yeah. So, you know, for the battalions and, you know, within the brigade, it really goes back to whatever your higher headquarters is putting out as terms of guidance, you know, on the installation. And I think they try to nest it pretty nicely with what's going on in the installation. The challenge that any tactical commander has is when you take a soldier and you have to send him out of state, where there's a completely different set of rules.
Yeah.
You know, so I can empathize with a soldier who's like, hey, you know, my parents are in some type of situation. There's a key family event. I want to go do this. And we want to make sure that they're safe when they're flying. We want to make sure they're safe when they get down there, and then they're safe when they're coming back. And, you know, we've gone through this. We've had spikes of COVID positives in our formation. And it's like anything else. That's a true test of leadership. You weather through that portion of it. You do what you need to do, you know, and then you continue to move on. And I think this entire year has really shown me, you know, across the board of this thing called organizational calm. You know, so for those, like, it's completely freaking out about all these things, and we're not going to do any training. We're not going to do this. We can't just shut down. I mean, that was probably okay in the first 2 weeks to try to figure out what we were doing and what we were actually, you know, the magnitude of the problem. But after like 2 or 3 weeks, we were like, come on, guys, like we're just not gonna. We just can't like sit around and not do anything.
That's the worst thing that a private could do. Idle hands.
I know.
He's not even a private yet.
I know. But it's also shown me a lot of innovation and creativity of some of our leaders, right?
Mm-hmm. So, you guys started the podcast.
Exactly.
How cool is that, right?
And it's funny. Nick was a big player on this. I talk about my son Brandon because I didn't understand why people were listening to podcasts, and he used to always tell me why all these guests that Joe Rogan had on, and all these things that they were talking about. And I was like, dude, I told you that, So clearly, like, he was not listening to me,
Yeah.
So as we went through this progression, I would tell you, like, Danny Matthews, Nick Ondovcsik, even Jeremy, like, helping out with some of these things. It's like
even Jeremy.
Yeah. the things that these guys had did to help with that lift of that platform. We started off as like Wayne's World in our basement.
Yeah.
It's just to kind of help with the messaging. As a commander that you want to make change, you always, if you're open and vulnerable, there's a risk, right, of putting yourself really at the breach of a lot of different things. I couldn't say like, hey, be the guy that's going to be the podcast host, and then when it's jacked up, be like, dude, you're going to get a negative OER. You know what I mean? Like, that's probably not the formula for mutual trust.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I'm going to be the guy. I've never done a podcast. I'm not a big social media guy, but I said, if I'm the individual in command, and it does. There's a lot of individuals that'll ask and say, hey, that's about self-aggrandizing and all this other stuff. But the thing that it's pretty awesome to see is if I showed you a map on all the places it's touched, and it's had, now I think it's, what is it, Nick, 500,000 or over 500,000 downloads.
Really? That's fucking rad.
Right? And I'm like, it's, and all it is we're having this conversation about leadership. We're having conversation about culture. We're having conversations about resiliency. All the things that I think people were kind of looking for, and a way to message to our force during this time.
Well, I think everybody, not just in the military, is starving for guidance on leadership.
Yeah.
Like, why do you think Jocko has become what he's become?
Yeah.
Or Mike Glover? You got these guys where it's like, they just exude leadership, and people are drawn to that.
Yeah.
And they want to learn from that. Yeah. And it's right there, and you guys captured that moment and created your podcasts. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. And I appreciate what you coming down here and showing us, because I'm getting an opportunity, and it's an incredible, I'm fortunate to have a chance to go to another organization and command again. And guys ask, and it's like, I'm not going to do a podcast over there. This podcast was a platform for the Brigade to help, share messaging and really communicate a lot of the things across a 5,000 person organization. Mm-hmm. And so now, but I have found some joy in just what I've personally learned and in the network of individuals. So some of the guys that have helped kind of build this, we've looked at, taking this and how do we do this on the outside?
Yeah.
Have these hard conversations, whether it has to do with workplace injustice, whether it has to do with resilience, whether it has to do with, I know we'll talk about later on is, when you have aging parents and they're going through something, somebody that's never heard about how to take their father through the VA process, right? Or go through the process like you and I were talking about, when you see your parents, and these are the guys that are the heroes that have taught you everything you need to do, and now you're the one that's having to be the care provider for them, or at least kind of, carve out a plan. I think there's a lot of things just based, if I'm finding ways at 23 years, if there's a way that I could share anything that was in here that was anything relevant, that provided any type of goodness, I want to share it.
Well, and you hear any of the top podcasters, and I'm not one of them, like your Rogans, your Jockos, your Andy Stumps, right? The guys that are getting 15 million downloads a month.
Yeah.
They say, like, when they meet people, they've never met this person before in their life, and that person has a relationship with them.
Yeah.
That person knows them.
Yeah.
They know what they like to eat. They know what they like to do. Like you could talk about Joe Rogan. I'd be like, okay, he likes this. He's a bow hunter. He does jiu-jitsu. Like, you go on and on and on. I feel like you provided that platform to your troops in an era where they couldn't get to know you with you standing on top of the podium talking to them.
Yeah.
so you did this, and then you were able to maintain that relationship with them. And that's pretty fucking unique, you know? Like, how many other battalion commanders are doing that? You know?
I don't think there's any battalion or any brigade commanders.
Or brigade, sorry. I'm stuck at the battalion level. I forget that there's something past a battalion, right? Because I don't even know what that is.
Greg, you've demoted me like 5 times on this show.
Yeah. Bro, when people talk about a brigade, I'm like, oh, a what? Yeah. Yeah. No, that's okay. He's a colonel, okay? He's a full bird colonel.
There's no platoon leaders making podcasts.
Yeah. And he has a camera that pans back and forth just based on who's talking. These don't do that.
Yeah.
We have to sit down and go back and forth, back and forth.
No, it's I mean, to be honest with you, it's really been awesome to see, you know, junior leaders that have a passion to share the message and to be open and vulnerable and transparent about what we're trying to do and believe in trying to change culture. Yeah. Right? So all this stuff you're talking about in the Ranger Regiment, you know, so for guys that have never served in there before, if you served in the Ranger Regiment, you're wearing a scroll, the responsibility is to live the charter. That's the second part of that.
Yep.
So as an officer, right, I mean, I wish that's the jealousy that I have. I wish I could be in the Ranger Regiment, you know, the entire time, but I love the organization that I'm with. And so when you go there and somebody sees that you have a Ranger Battalion scroll or a Ranger Regimental scroll, you own that responsibility to bring everything that you've learned from there and try to make it the better, or at least, you know, bring those same goodness things to that organization.
Yeah, for sure. And for people that aren't familiar with what you're talking about, it's Abrams Charter. Like, that was one of the foundational ideas of the regiment, is like, people will cycle through, they will gain a higher level of training and a higher level of responsibility and a higher level of capability. And then when you cycle back to what they call the regular Army, you bring that experience with you. That's right. And you share that with other troops. And then the Army as a whole becomes more capable.
That's right.
So,
and it goes back to what we were talking about, right? You were in a CIB, you were in Master Raider Wings, you know, you were in a Ranger Battalion scroll. I personally believe you have a responsibility, you know, to carry that knowledge and experience and teach somebody else, teach another formation to help to move from wherever their experiences were to make that organization better. And you know, like, we're getting to this point about what else to talk about. I love talking about this brigade. I love sharing the story. I love, you know, communicating about the journey. I love sharing about, you know, the transformation and seeing what junior leaders, you know, whether officer or non-commissioned officer, you know, enlisted soldiers, what they've done. It's been pretty neat to see. And
well, and I'll tell you this, like, I think, because I wanted to do a career in the military. Like, I told you my story, right? Mm-hmm. I got meted out of flight school. Mm-hmm. But I look at guys like Bohannon, and I'm not hating on you. You're one of my homies, and I love you, right? But I feel like there's a huge opportunity to experience all this different stuff in the military.
Yeah.
And if you want to just have 20 years in the regiment, like, for me, there's other things to do, right? And now you're getting to experience stuff outside of the regiment and have influence outside of the regiment. Yeah. And it's like, if your whole military career is regiment, it's like, you're probably selling yourself short, because there's opportunities outside of that as well, you know?
Absolutely.
So I actually have a question for both of you on that. So I absolutely agree with taking that and teaching. My question to you, Colonel, is, did you modify that from the regiment to conventional Army? And if so, what did you modify?
Yeah, absolutely, right? So you can't be the same way in every organization, right? It's a different sense. You take the principles that you have, you take the great lessons learned, and then you recognize it. I think there's two things you have to balance as a leader. You have to look at it and say, hey, what are my strengths, and kind of having this, you know, awareness, self-awareness, and then where's my organization at, and how far can I push them? So it's like managing the number of stretch objectives. So when I come into an organization, you know, it doesn't matter what the stats say. What I'm looking at is potential. And what I'm also looking at is constantly hunting for talent across that organization. And the thing that I love, right, is I got a specialist that's sitting upstairs, right, in the 3 shop. And this is an individual that got his doctorate, in like astrophysics, and he's gonna like.
So he's more intelligent than me.
Than everybody in this room,
combined.
So somebody asked me, like my CG asked me, like, hey, what do you have that guy doing? I said, sir, that guy's up there building a time machine. Hopefully we can go back and I don't get an IG complaint. So, but then it's the same thing.
Leadership 101, utilizing your people with their strengths,
and then just to see how to tell the story, right? So, not that I'm like plugging anybody or whatever, but just incredible, people that I've got a chance to have a conversation with, like Dan Coyle, right? The first thing, if you really wanted to change culture and understand it as a skill that all leaders can do, you've got to create an environment that's safe and secure. The second thing is you got to be able to have this thing called shared risk. So I always kind of use the analogy in an airborne unit, the shared risk is us all jumping out of an airplane. It doesn't matter if you're a general or a private. Yeah. We're all going out of that same thing. Yep. And so it's a little bit different in a Stryker organization. It's a little bit different if you're not infantry or, not having that same thing. But EIB, ESB, EFMB, you're all going into the same tent. You all have to demonstrate the same standard, as you're going through. So you got to find those things. And you also got to lead this thing called vulnerability. So I think that's the hardest thing as you continue to move up as a leader and be able to share. Everybody's going to look at this, and no one puts out on your bio like, hey, here's all the things that Colonel Chung jacked up that he was going through. Yeah. And, one of the first times I stood up, it says, you're going to see all these things that I did, right? You're going to say, hey, I went to West Point, I served in the Ranger Regiment, I did all these things, whatever, got promoted early a couple of times. You're not going to see all the stuff below. I didn't get accepted at West Point. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I got divorced. And so you show all these things below, and it's like, hey, this is not to tell you, like, to feel bad for me. This is to show you that I'm just like every one of you guys. And so you have to ask yourself, what do you want to be able to do? Like, it's about building this network of people around you to go through the challenges personally and professionally you have. And then the last thing that I love about this organization is you got to tell the narrative, right? So, most recently, like Danny Matthews, we were one of the units, like the 2nd Brigade, to field the new night vision goggles. And I'm telling you, Greg, like this thing has been like captured at Fox News, Business Insider, Task and Purpose. And make one video that shows everything it looks like. And it's incredible, and it goes viral. Over like 5 million shares. Mm-hmm. And these are guys that understand. And everybody asks, like, hey, does Colonel Chung approve when you put something on Twitter? Does Colonel Chung approve something when you put it on Instagram? I'm like, absolutely not. You if you wanted that, we'd have like no followers. Yeah. So like you give them the left and right limits, and it should be the point where it's almost so uncomfortable. But you want them. I want soldiers to take a photo and kind of get over the fact, like, hey, like the old days, like Sergeant Major's like, we don't like to use that photo because the guy's not wearing iPro. Hey, Sergeant Major, that guy's going to take that same photo, put it on his own IG, right? Get like 5 million freaking, likes. Yeah. Versus put it in our own unit. And then now people are like resharing the things that we're doing. And so,
that's cool.
It's about finding that thing, finding that those platforms and that stuff to tell the story. And it's been pretty neat to see. So I think you got to adjust a little bit in your approach. You got to know yourself, and you got to know the organization, see its potential, and be able to kind of see how far in terms of stretch objectives they're going to do. And here's an example, right? So if I came in day one, and I said, get every commander and first sergeant out on Lancer Field, and I height weight them, give them a PT test. Guarantee you. And I got 3 company commanders here. Guarantee you, I'd probably get an IG complaint. And Inspector General, for those that are like. So essentially, it's like, reporting to your HR, department that I am singling somebody out. Yeah. So over a 2-year period, leveraging the harness of all the commanders and command sergeant majors, they have been able to create and find the right team, and I will look at them now. If I did that, I don't think that would ever be in their minds. Mm-hmm. So, you can ask Nick and Hailey,
Good to go?
Yeah.
That's right now. Let's go.
25 leg tuck. 25 leg tucks.
Might be over tape, but I'm fine.
So as a brigade commander,
Yeah.
I didn't demote you there, right?
No, you.
That's good. How much longer do you have left in this position, and then what's next?
Yeah, I'm changing out on 4 June.
Okay.
4 June on, and it'll be there on right in front of the brigade headquarters. And then I'm going to go over to what they call 5th SFAB, so Security Forces Assistance Brigade, which is a little bit smaller. So it's a second opportunity to take command of a brigade and focus on the advise and assist mission on the conventional side in the Indo-PACOM AOR. So as I mentioned, right, so it's, senior leaders have mentioned that the strategic center of gravity is increasing the relationship of allies and partners. And the operational center of gravity is the ability to project into some AOR. I think this is a great opportunity to both. So the way they're organized, it's a senior organization. So staff sergeant, to battalion commander, colonel, brigade commander, and it was built initially to take the stress off brigade combat teams. That once they got this mission to go over Afghanistan toward the tail end of GWAD, and they would break these brigades up and they would make them all these advise and assist missions. So now they created 5 brigades. They originally were then rotating them over to Afghanistan to close that mission out. Now that mission is now coming toward an end, those brigades have been regionally aligned. So 5th Brigade is regionally aligned to Indo-PACOM's AOR.
Okay. And are you staying local, or
we'll stay local here in JBLM?
So we'll be able to do this again.
Oh yeah,
Nick's leaving us, but we'll be able to do this again.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Great mission, and I'll be able to tell you. So I'm excited to share the experiences of working with all these different forces across the AOR. Maldives, Indonesia, Philippines. I think it'll be pretty neat.
That's awesome. All right, well, we're at 2 hours and 8 minutes. That's usually where I wrap these up. You got anything you want to leave the listeners with?
No, I appreciate you taking the time to come down. This is always a great experience, and as we mentioned, the same energy that we had and we've left with here in the Lancer Brigade, I think we've got guys that are going to come forth, and I'd say stay tuned, and we'll keep you updated, because we're going to look at doing this, outside of the military.
Awesome. And I will, as last time, link all your stuff to my stuff, so people that are listening that want to follow you or look at your podcast and that kind of stuff, we'll connect you guys. So
awesome.
All right, pretty cool. Thank you.
All right,
appreciate
brother.
it.